really healthy, successful business. But even the founder CEO had this sort of head scratching moment with us saying, we've got this great culture. People are really happy here. We're not performing, like we're not doing what we need to do. And we were like, it's because...
In this episode, I'm speaking to Adam Horne. Adam has bootstrapped 4 companies in the people and talent space, scaling his last one to over 70 employees and over 4 million in revenue. He's now a co-founder of a company called OpenOrg, helping companies achieve transparent cultures. In this interview, we're going to talk about how to actually define your culture, why Adam thinks motivation and happiness at work aren't as important as you think they are, how people and talent professionals can become more transparent today, and how you can grow your personal brand too. Let's get into it. Adam Horne, thanks for joining me.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
I'd like to start by asking you about company culture. You recently wrote, "Stop using the word culture if you can't tell people what it means." In practical terms, what does it mean?
Yeah, it's probably an unfair question or request to ask of people, actually, because depending on who you talk to, it means different things to different people, although they think it means different things. So this is like personal view, and everyone will have their own. But for us at OpenOrg, we talk about the fact that culture is how we work, not how we feel about work. And from what we see, a lot of companies talk about culture in this terms of like feelings and emotions and vibes, which is where they tend to sort of go wrong a little bit. So we try and focus on the how we, and it's all about how we work, how we get our best work done together, which if you look at it in that perspective, you start to be able to dig deeper on a much more tangible operational level and break culture down into things that you can actually adjust, measure, change, put into place from like tools, processes, etc. So we focus on the how we, and ultimately like culture for us is how we get our work done together.
I think that's one of the things people probably struggle with like company culture, right? Is it feels very intangible and fluffy, whereas what you're proposing there is a little bit more like real things we can actually look at.
The conversation that a lot of people have about culture ultimately is about how their company culture is making them feel. So like that's a result of culture rather than culture itself. So people talk about our culture being supportive or collaborative or nice. Like those things are all true, but they're not the culture. They're what culture is making you feel. So you have to strip that back and look deeper and past that and actually say, like, what is it that's in place that's making us feel like a collaborative, supportive place? And if you can start to understand that, define that, communicate that, that's where you start to really help people understand how we do things here. And also, will I enjoy this? Will I thrive here?
On cultures then, yourself and John have started a company which is solely dedicated to help companies develop transparent cultures. Why is this movement towards transparency a thing that we're seeing?
Yeah, and again, fully not started by us. We when we started OpenOrg, we got quite lucky because in tandem, there was this whole conversation going on, particularly in the US and in Europe, around pay transparency. So that's a big wave that's happening at the moment, particularly around compensation. We entered the game, as it were, with a little bit more of a focus on culture and broader transparency at work, with a view of like, and I guess bringing some experience that we've both had to the table around lack of transparency. For me, it was around hiring and employer brand and TA. That's my background. So anyone who's from the TA space will know all the problems that are around this, but the mis-selling of culture, whether it's intentional or unintentional when you're hiring, causes so many problems. You end up having to rehire for roles. You end up you wasting candidates' time, wasting companies' time. People join companies and feel like they've been sold something that's not true. And there's a lot of damage that's done in the process from that point of view. John, my co-founder, similarly has seen the damage that lack of transparency causes once you're working in a business day to day in larger environments. Quite often when it comes to like siloed communication, leadership teams, stuff, giving people the information they need and so on and so forth, and the damage that it causes managers. He was a middle manager in a larger corporate business and felt trapped and completely stuck about what he was able to share with his team versus the information he was getting. So there was this thread connecting a lot of the conversations we had that was ultimately around communication within businesses, but also outside of businesses, and how you can better utilize that and also raise that bar on transparency in general across the entire business to improve how people feel, how people work, and how people thrive in a business setting.
I want to challenge you a little bit on pushbacks from founders or pushbacks that founders may have against this. Both you and I, we both work with kind of founder-led businesses predominantly. And I've been reading this book, Inside Apple, which was really, really good timing for speaking to you, because this book effectively documents how Steve Jobs built a very successful company, but on the back of secrecy and a real lack of transparency in their organization. How do you deal with it when founders, maybe they even quote case studies like this, but when founders push back about being transparent?
I think for me, the problem comes not about whether someone is transparent or not, but what they claim to be. So I don't know. I haven't read that book. So I don't know if this is true or not, but I do know a few things about Apple and the fact that from like an employer brand perspective, they've always led on this sort of openness themselves around the fact that there are trade-offs to working. Like, you will get to work with some of the smartest tech and smartest people on the planet, but you're going to have no social life. Like, you're going to give a lot to have this job, and there are trade-offs here. Be upfront about that, and people understand what they're getting. They understand what that deal is before they join. And I don't know if this is the case or not, but if people go into Apple knowing and expecting and assuming that there is the secrecy here and there's going to be things we don't, that's okay if you expect that. But the problem that most companies have is founders and exec teams have this pressure or this feeling that, okay, we should default to being transparent and open or saying that we're going to do this because it feels like what people want, and then they can't do it. So there's the mismatched expectations there around like trying to do something but not actually doing it. And that's more damaging than someone like Apple saying, you know what, this is a secretive place and you're not going to have certain information here, but if you're not okay with that, don't join. And that's where, like, in some respects, that's a really healthy company, I would argue.
Yeah, great point. I think another case study here is in NVIDIA, where expectation really equals reality there. But the expectation is you're going to work 7 days a week. It's going to be the hardest job you ever have, but everybody knows that coming into it. And I think their return is about 2% a year, and the industry average is 14%, despite them working way more hours than anyone else. So yeah, I think that's the nut to crack, isn't it?
GitLab, like, always argued as being the most transparent company in the world. They also talk very publicly about the stuff that they don't share. So they don't, just because they're transparent doesn't mean they share stuff. There's a lot of secrets there. There's a lot of things they don't talk about, but they do tell people explicitly on their handbook, these are the things we don't share with you and why. And that is transparency in itself. And it's very, very powerful. It's very open and people can deal with that. So it's just about managing expectations.
Quick pause to talk about one of our partners, Pinpoint. Pinpoint provide an applicant tracking system that's easy to use, looks great, and is packed with helpful features. However, after working with Pinpoint for over a year now, my favorite thing about them is actually the team itself. They built this flexible software and they're committed to molding that to every single customer they work with to fit their hiring context and specific needs. I'm also a big fan of their free recruitment trends tool, where they give away benchmarks from their customer data. I'll link to that below. Back to the interview.
I want to quote some of your posts again. So a couple from a longer post here. Using happiness as a measure of strength of culture is so dangerous. And then later on in that post, you also say, stop trying to motivate employees. Why do you think that focusing on happiness and motivation isn't enough?
Yeah, it's a great one. And this was like a light bulb moment for us a bit more recently as well. We were chatting to a CEO founder of a 100-person business, a bootstrapped business, profitable, 20 million ARR, very well-known name in a lot of circles. And on the outside, really, really healthy, successful business and doing well, frankly. But even the founder CEO had this sort of head-scratching moment with us saying, like, we've got this great culture. People are really happy here, but we're not performing. Like, we're not doing what we need to do. And we were like, it's because you're putting, when we got chatting and digging deeper, the strategy almost from a people perspective was, if we make people happy, we'll do well. Like, they'll enjoy their job. They'll want to work here. They'll turn up and we'll perform. That's an element of it, but you can't just focus on trying to make people happy and hope that they'll perform as a team, collaborate well, work well, know what to build, know how to do it, thrive with the tooling that we've got. All this stuff happens in between. The happiness piece should be a natural byproduct of someone performing well in their role and feeling like they're doing what they're doing and they're connected to the company mission and there's a purpose to their job. that all comes very, very naturally if someone's connected to a business from a cultural perspective. You can weave in some intentional happiness on top of that around perks and benefits and socials and offsites and some of the sort of wider, more aesthetically pleasing stuff. Amazing. Like that's all really, really good. But the issue I tend to see is companies focus on that top layer, that sort of aesthetic layer of like, these are the things we can just put in place for people to make this a really nice work environment, and everything else will happen. And they don't focus on the stuff that's underneath of like, how do we actually get these people working well together as a team and performing well? And if that's not there, happiness fades very, very quickly.
I think actually in that post you mentioned, instead of focusing on what motivates employees, look at what demotivates them and basically try and remove those blockers in the road to make work feel easy and therefore feel good, right?
I'm probably reducing this a little bit too much, but generally speaking, it's quite hard for companies to set themselves apart on things like benefits and perks. Now they all offer very similar things there or thereabouts, and it's not what used to be, probably restricted a little bit more to the startup space. Everyone wanted to work for startups, all the funded like environments that they had, all the money they had to spend on employees and looking after them, etc. That's actually like quite a level playing ground now in much larger companies. So like the issue comes actually is the day-to-day frustrations that people have in their roles are way bigger than the bonuses that they might get out from like benefits and perks. So focus on understanding the things that are demotivating people day to day, which typically are, embedded in things like tooling that we use and processes we have. Not just like Microsoft Teams, but like you ask a lot of people, like, is there a tool stack they wouldn't want to use if they were moving jobs? Microsoft Teams, and the Microsoft tech stack often is way up there of like, would not want to join a company that uses this. And that's huge. Like it demotivates people. So that for me is focus on those sorts of things and understand what is like bringing people down rather than trying to continually make them happy, because that wears off and it doesn't work.
I'm a hardcore Google Meet kind of guy.
I'm definitely Slack plus, we've been using Zoom, but we've moved on to Button now. So
I've quoted your LinkedIn post a couple of times there. You've built a following of over 40,000 now on LinkedIn. What's been your journey over the last year or two with personal branding?
Yeah, so unintentional to some degree, but really embraced it eventually. So I've used LinkedIn every day, I think, for 13, 14 years, because I've been in recruitment. Was day one, 2011, whenever it was, like jumped on this thing and didn't know what to do or how to use it. But I've used it a lot the years, but mostly just for what most sort of TA people use it for, like searching candidates, using it for like trying to find the right people. Never really been big on posting, and the last couple of years got very quiet because my role stepped back from day-to-day recruiting to building a team, and so it became a lot quieter. But when I left that company, I decided to do some freelance work and some consulting whilst I was trying to work out what I wanted to do. So I thought I need to build a bit of a brand here and put my flag in the sand on a particular topic and start building an audience. So I jumped on LinkedIn and committed to posting every single day on a topic that I liked and believed in. And I did that for a good few months and just started to really enjoy it. And for me, it was not just a way of building brand and audience, but just almost like cathartic in a way, like getting your thoughts down on paper, gathering sort of your thoughts a little bit I really enjoyed. So it's like been probably almost 2 years now. And I posted every single day, I think, for 2 years apart from Sundays. And I just really enjoy it. It's stressful as well. As anyone who's like trying to commit to that will know, but yeah, it's a really big part of my day to day. And the audience has grown amazingly and hopefully will continue to do so.
Definitely think that consistency takes away the anxiety of posting. Like if you post once a month, you really then stress about the engagement and metrics and stuff. Once you're posting 6 times a week, you don't even have time to focus on that, but you just get so used to doing it, right? It becomes part of your daily routine. What would be your advice to anyone who's more starting out their journey of posting and building a personal brand?
It's a really good question. And like, it depends on what you want to get out of it. I would say, like, I've spoken to a few people who have paid to do some like courses that like popular influencers out there are starting to offer, like to go on this journey where you can grow your audience to hundreds of thousands and get millions of likes on your posts and stuff like that. And that's all well and good. It was not a path that I would take if I started again, or would even try and take now, because I worked out very early on that I've got a very specific audience that I want to reach and connect with. And that for me is like TA people and people within startups and scale-ups. I don't need a software engineer to be seeing my posts or liking my posts necessarily. If they like to, then amazing. But I don't need to reach everyone and anyone. So I think like depends on your journey, depends what you want to do. If your goal is to maximize audience and reach, there's content out there that you can post that just caters to that. And that's like probably where you can post some fluffier infographics or like post about quotes about beanbags and culture and coffee and stuff. Like that's where you double down on that every day. You always get lots of likes and stuff. If you really want to add value to an audience and build trust and possibly convert some of those audience members into community members like we do, or long-term customers that you work with, you've got to prove value. You've got to resonate with them on a level that they think they would like to implement their job. So our job is to try and craft content really that resonates with our audience. And that means going a bit deeper and being a little bit niche with our views. So again, think about what you want to get out of it, and then don't start too big either. Like 3 or 4 times a week is probably a good start. I sort of did that, and then I slowly found out got more to post about. I might post an extra day a week, and slowly but surely I've sort of committed to 5 or 6 days, which works fine for me.
I think there's a couple of things I really like about your content in particular is, firstly, the storytelling element to it. You're really good at taking people from point A to point B. Like, here's a problem, here's how you might solve it. And the other thing, which I try and do as much as possible as well, is you provide a lot of practical examples. Like, you do a lot of stuff on employer brand, right? You'll actually just get up someone's career page and do a teardown of it. And a lot of content is very high level on LinkedIn. So I think that low level content is, even if it doesn't get the most amount of engagement, that's where the value is, right?
Yeah. Some of my best posts, as it were, in terms of DMs I've had, comments I've had, community applications I've had, whatever it might be, have come from like the least engaged posts. So you sort of, the old me would have been like, this is terrible. I had 10 likes on this post today, when you sort of care about your metrics, etc. But actually some of the really low engagement posts have had the most success for me. So don't get too sucked into that. Like, post about what you believe in and like and want to post about, and the right people will follow you. Like, that's simplified, but I think it works.
Let's talk about talent acquisition a little bit then. We've both got backgrounds in TA and spend a lot of time speaking to TA people. From your side of things on the transparency, what practical things can almost every talent acquisition professional do? And I'm thinking maybe they don't have the password to go overhaul the careers site tomorrow with some of the more bigger strategic stuff. What else can they be doing?
Yeah, this is really hard, by the way. Like, and I feel sorry for a lot of TA teams because they're stuck in the middle, and they're the ones that get the flack. Like, they're the ones that get shouted at by candidates for not sharing a salary or whatever, but not their choice. Quite often it's like the business they're in, and they're just sort of doing what they can work with. So I say this a little bit with like that caveat there. I fully appreciate that you're in this really tough place, but a few things that I'd encourage people to try and do, and like that I think a lot of people don't, is one is to do a little bit better, like the kickoff calls when you're sort of being briefed on roles with hiring managers. Like, there's certain information that you could try and get or ask. It will go a bit deeper to build better job ads, more information for candidates up front that I don't think a lot of TA teams probably do. They get the bare basics, they probably rush, they are busy, and they throw it into a templated job ad, get it up and live as ASAP, and just wait for applications to come in. I think we've got a whole list somewhere which I can dig out and share afterwards if need be, but so much information that you can get from a hiring manager. And if you can't get it, don't just accept that. Dig further, go somewhere higher, treat this as information you need if you're going to hire this role properly. So getting that information that you haven't currently got is a really, really big unlocker there for sure. I think working on some commitment as a team around SLAs and commitments around feedback can be powerful. Like, often you can do that without any sort of thumbs up from above, as it were. There's a lot of problems around candidate experience, which is probably like in another 10 podcast episodes worth of content there. But like, we all know that. We all talk about that a lot. but it's in a really, really bad place. And like the SLAs that people work to, or the lack of expectations that are set around what this process is going to look like and when you'll hear back from us, or what level of feedback you can expect versus the stage that you get to. Again, generally speaking, is stuff that's all missing from a lot of processes. So that, in terms of communication and experience, often is the biggest thing I think that candidates want. And people can actually handle not getting feedback if they know up front that they're not going to get a certain amount of feedback at a certain stage of the process. So there's sort of a couple of things I think most TA teams could work with there without having the password to change, like career site, for example. And then the final one for me actually would be like just knowing your hiring manager a bit better. A lot of people will have some sort of relationship with them, but truly understanding this person's like management style, who thrives under their management style, who doesn't, what's this person like when they're under pressure. Like this is the person that's going to ultimately decide probably whether this person thrives or fails in this environment. So knowing that individual hiring manager and who's going to be a good fit for that person's team is so important. And I don't think a lot of people actually do that from what I've seen and experienced over time.
Yeah, I love that first point you made on digging deeper and sharing more information. I think it was Pinpoint did this for their account executive, and on the job advert, they put what your KPIs are going to be in this role, but also here's how the other 4 account executives in the team are performing against those KPIs. So it's not only showing them like really what's expected from them in that role, but I think a big anxiety, maybe specific for sales reps, is that you're going to be set unrealistic targets that you can't achieve. So they're also seeing how realistic they are from how the team is performing right now, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Like there's a lot of, there's a Pandora's box there that you could open. So we'll probably spend another few hours talking about that one, but there are definitely some things that TA teams could do that they're not doing, I think, and it circulates around some of the basics probably.
Final question then. You spend a lot of time looking at careers pages, and we've spoke about them briefly a couple of times there. Whose employer brand are you loving right now, and what can we maybe learn from what they're doing?
If I had to pick one, it's PostHog, who I like probably name drop about 10 times a day already anyway, so they might not be a new one, but they've literally just relaunched their careers site in the last few days, and it's just even bigger and better than it was before. Super authentic, like you've got their personality running through it. It's fun, it's silly, but it's also like really serious as well, and they've woven some like really great messages in there and clarity around who should and shouldn't apply. They're bold enough to say like, we don't have a career development framework here. Like you've got to be okay with that, which no companies like had to do typically. You know, they share their monthly management report embedded on their careers page. So you can go in there and look at their company performance, how they're doing. Yeah, I could rattle on for a long time, but they just share so much, but they also give people real clarity over like the type of people that work here and also how we get our work done here. And you get a real sense as to like, would I enjoy it in this business or not, rather than what you tend to see as a candidate day in, day out.
I've never seen a careers page which goes from intense detail discussing if their employees like pineapple on pizza or not, to then the founder going, here's exactly what it's like to work here. We have no career frameworks. This is what's expected of you. Really awesome site.
Yeah, like just the upfront clarity around like, we don't have middle managers. So if you want to be a manager, don't join. Like this is not the place for you. You've got to roll your sleeves up and be an IC basically. And it's just great. It's really, really good. And there's a couple of others as well, but I think that'd be my has always been my number one.
Adam Horne, thanks for your time.
Thank you.